Hello, everyone. Welcome to the families of the Jackson and Midtown clusters to the Division of Academics Family Community Cluster Training. This training is presented by the Division of Academics to ensure that our families have an opportunity to hear from our different departments about our initiatives that we are bringing forth this year. And this is the fall of 2022's iteration of this meeting. These are our meeting norms. Please always be polite and respectful to others. Ask questions in the chat if you need to. Stay focused on the topics at hand and be patient. Assume everyone is doing their very best. Here's our agenda for today. We will have brief welcome and introductions, and then we will look closely at the APS map and BASC Best 3 data. Telehealth services and physical and mental health will also report out to our families. We will listen to information from our APS personalized learning department and team and their focus. We will also hear about our math vision for teaching and learning this year, and we'll wrap up in each section with a Q&A. I'll start by saying first, hello, everyone. My name is Jermel Riggins. I am the Director of Elementary Curriculum and Instruction. I will allow my colleagues to unmute and introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. I'm Shannon Hervey, Director of Student Support.
Good evening, everyone. I am Jermaine Sumler-Faison, and I'm the Director of Instructional Development and Design in the Office of Instructional Technology.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Valencia Hildreth. I'm the Health Services Director.
Good evening. My name is Cassandra Holmes, and I'm the Director for Atlanta Virtual Academy.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tom Munn. I'm the Program Director for Chief Academic Officer, Yolanda Brown.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Saunders, Director of Library Media Services.
Good afternoon. I'm Monique O'Brien, Director of Research and Evaluation.
I think that's everyone. And as you have heard the name and some of the departments and divisions that they have represented, I wanted to give you a brief overview of who represents the overall picture of the Division of Academics. First, our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Yolanda Brown, and under her, we have heard both Thomas Munn today, Ms. Beatrice Jones, and also Tracy Carroll. But we have 3 Assistant Superintendents of Teaching and Learning. My boss, who is Selena Florence, I am representing her today, actually. The Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, who you've heard from some of her representatives. She won't begin, she's a new hire. She will not begin until November 7th. And then finally, Aaliyah Henderson Rosser, who is our Superintendent of Instructional Technology. Again, some of the people who have represented themselves today, their titles are listed under here. So hopefully if you have any questions, you can make note of who it is that you have questions for as we move through the presentation tonight. Every year, we revisit and reshape our strategic plan. Our strategic plan serves as our anchor. Although that plan is devised and created for 2025 through 2020 through 2025, we revisit every year for tweaks and updates to make sure that we are staying on track. And it serves as the anchor for our work. Of course, that anchor is rooted in our APS 5. There are 5 areas that we stay focused on. This is our strategy to ensure equitable outcomes for all of our students. First, data, where we make sure that we're using data to inform all of the decisions that we make from top to bottom, curriculum and instruction, where we're focused on implementing high quality curricular resources with rigor and fidelity for all students at Tier 1 and beyond. Whole child intervention, where we have implemented a system of support that integrates social and emotional learning, behavior wellness, and comprehensive academic intervention plans. Personalized learning, where we utilize flexible learning tools, technology integration, and targeted instruction to personalize learning for all students. Finally, signature programming. You may have heard about it before, either through IB supports or through STEM supports for our schools, where we strengthen the implementation of that signature program across all of our schools. Please get ready to hear from our fabulous representative. The first one will be Dr. Monique O'Brien, who will talk to us about our MAP results and our MAP assessment. And then you'll hear about the BAS S3. Dr. O'Brien.
Thank you. Good afternoon, families and community members. Next slide, please. In school year 2021-2022, APS began administering the NWA MAP assessment to help us monitor our progress towards improving student literacy and numeracy proficiency. The MAP reading and MAP assessments allow us to estimate how well elementary and middle school students will perform on the Georgia Milestones, English Language Arts, and MAP assessments. MAP accurately classifies students into the correct proficiency categories around 82 to 84% of the time for ELA and approximately 84 to 87% of the time for MAP. As you can see here, approximately 31% of our students in grades 3 to 8 performed at a proficiency level of proficient or distinguished on the Georgia Milestones assessment. And you can see this by looking at the dark green and light green rectangles. This is comparable to our spring MAP reading assessment data, where 34% of our students were estimated to perform at the proficient and distinguished levels. Similarly, 26% of our students performed at the proficient and distinguished levels on the spring 2022 Georgia Milestones MAP assessment. And again, this is comparable to our spring MAP assessment, where 25% of our students scored at the proficient or distinguished level. Next slide. During the month of August, we administered the MAP assessment to students in grades pre-K through 12th grade. We are currently in our second year of administering the MAP assessment, which allows us to compare student growth from fall of 2021 to fall of 2022 for students enrolled in APS during both test windows. Approximately 59% of students in the district are showing average to high growth in reading from fall of last year to fall of this year when we compare our students to students across the nation. And this can be seen by looking at the yellow, which is the average, the green, which is high average, and blue, which is high growth for our students. Our cluster level data is showing similar patterns of student growth. This means that we are headed in the right direction with growing our students academically in reading. Next slide. An additional perk of the MAP assessment is that it allows the district to use MAP reading results to estimate spring ELA milestone performance for students in grades 2nd to 8th grade. While the best estimate of spring ELA milestones performance is the spring MAP assessment, the fall MAP estimates allow us to gauge whether we are headed in the right direction. Our fall 2022 MAP results indicate that the district and clusters are reducing the percentage of students performing at the beginning level, which is shown in red, compared to fall of last school year. Additionally, the percentage of students performing at the proficient and distinguished levels have increased from last fall to this fall. Similar to reading, our students are seeing growth in mathematics. Approximately 65% of students in the district are showing average to high growth in mathematics from fall of last year to fall of this year when we compare our students to students across the nation. Our cluster level data is showing similar patterns in students' growth in mathematics. This speaks to our strategy to support our students in mathematics. We can use the fall mathematic estimates of the Georgia Milestones achievement levels to gauge whether we are headed in the right direction. Our fall 2022 MAT results indicate that at the district and cluster level, we are reducing the percentage of students performing at the beginning level in mathematics, which is shown in red, compared to fall of last year. Additionally, the percentage of students performing at the proficient and distinguished levels, as shown in green, in mathematics has increased from fall of last year to this fall. Thank you for listening to our MAT performance. And with that, I will transition over to Dr. Shannon Hervey to provide you with more details about the BAS-3 assessment.
Thank you, Dr. O'Brien. Next slide. As part of the Whole Child Framework, the district secured its first ever universal social emotional behavior screener last school year, which is the BAS-3 BEST. The BEST screens for a variety of behavior and emotional disorders that can lead to adjustment problems. This tool is a quick and efficient way to obtain screener data for students ages 3 to 18 for their behavior and emotional risks. Next slide. So you may be asking, why screen for social, emotional, behavioral health? In addition to learning more about the risks all students may be subject to, the beauty of this screener is that it will help to put students on the radar of school staff who otherwise may not be there. What we have learned is that schools may not be aware of the inner and emotional struggles of students who don't advocate for themselves or students with good grades and typical behavior. The data from this screener will create an evidence-based pathway for students to receive additional supports, provide information that will help schools to focus effort, time, and resources on students who have the highest need, and it will also aid schools in making big picture programming decisions in support of students. Next slide. The screener is administered twice per school year, once in the fall and once in the spring. The fall administration window just closed on October the 7th. The spring administration window will open February the 6th and close March 3rd. Parents will receive a score report following each administration window. And for the fall administration, parents should have received their score report by October the 28th. The World Languages Department worked collaboratively with the Student Support Department to ensure that the needs of English learners and their families were addressed throughout the screening process. The World Languages Department will also work with schools to ensure that all families understand their child's screener report. Next slide. I'd like to take a moment to review what you will see as you are reviewing your child's screener report. First, take note of the BAS-3 BEST screener indexes and their explanations. These acronyms you will see again in the next few slides as I preview sample score reports. The screener will produce student data that is measured in risk. Teacher and parent forms will reveal whether a student is at risk for developing externalizing behaviors, such as hyperactivity or aggression, internalizing behaviors such as anxiety or depression, or adaptive skills deficits, or problems with communication or social skills. Student forms will reveal whether a student is at risk for developing internalizing behaviors, again, such as anxiety or depression, self-regulation deficits, such as hyperactivity or attention problems, or personal adjustment deficits, such as relationship problems, self-esteem challenges, or self-reliance issues. Students are given an overall score, which is the BERIT score, which indicates how far their score is from the average of the norm group. The color coding helps to give you a glance at how risk is measured as normal risk, elevated risk, or extremely elevated risk. Next slide. When you receive your cover letter and score report from your child's school, it may be printed in color, such as the copy on the left, or it may be printed in black and white, such as the copy on the right. The two reports are the same, and both provide you with the same information. I want to point out that even if you receive the black and white copy of the report, if you take note of the words next to the gray dot, then you will see whether the indexes were determined to be normal, elevated, or extremely elevated for risk. I also want you to have an opportunity to view an example of what a screener report could tell you for each student. In the next few slides, I'll provide more explanation of the individual components of a score report. Next slide. This is an example of a sample score report for a 4th grade student who's in elementary school, and we'll call this student Sheila E. at ABC Elementary School. On the score report, you see the assessment results and the validity indicators. If you look in the column that says assessment results, you see the BERI, or the Behavioral and Emotional Risk Index, which indicates how far away from the norm average your student scored. Remember the color coding that I referenced earlier. The green dot and wording next to the BERI tells us that this student has scored as normal risk, which does not indicate a need for support or follow-up at this time. The validity indicators provide an explanation of the extent to which this particular score report may be considered valid and that you can trust the outcome of the report. Validity index indicators will show as green for acceptable, yellow for caution, or red for extreme caution. The F index will let you know how harsh or overly negative the rater was in their responses. The consistency index will let you know if there were different or conflicting responses provided to questions that are similar. The response pattern index will let you know if a pattern was detected that may indicate that the rater selected answers randomly or in a pattern. Here you see that the F index, consistency index, and the response pattern index is acceptable, which means that you can trust the outcome of this report. Next slide. Part of the score report that you receive will contain the actual student responses to the questions asked and the frequency to which these items occur, which would be never, sometimes, often, or always. This student acknowledges that she sometimes has trouble sitting still, sometimes feels like her life is getting worse and worse, and sometimes feels that no one understands her. This student also acknowledges that school feels good to her always. Others have respect for her always, and her parents like to be with her always. Reviewing the individual questions can provide you as a parent with more information to better understand how your student may currently interpret their day-to-day environment. However, remember that the BERI of this score report was normal risk, which means that the responses this student shared are comparable to the average norm of other students that have taken the screener. Next slide. This is an example of a score report for a 10th grade high school student who we'll call Tyler P. at XYZ High School. The red dot and the wording next to the BERI tells us that this student has scored as extremely elevated in risk, which may indicate a need for support. Note that I said that although the BERI is listed as extremely elevated, there may be a need for support. That is because the score report is a starting point, and there are other actions that are necessary to be taken by student support staff to confirm risk and identify need before recommending that support. Also noted is that internal risk, which measures risk for behaviors associated with depression or anxiety, is elevated for risk, and the self-regulation index, which measures risk for self-control, is extremely elevated for risk. Since this student scored elevated for both internal and self-regulation risks, support may be needed in both areas. According to the validity indicators, you can see that the F index, consistency index, and the response pattern index are all acceptable, which means that you can trust the outcome of this report. Next slide. The second part of this student score report provides you as parent and school staff with more information on where additional support may be indicated. This student endorses having trouble sitting still always. His parents trust him never. His school feels good to him never. He feels like his life is getting worse and worse always. He forgets to do things always. He gets into trouble for not paying attention always, and he is never good at making decisions. Again, this information is a starting point that helps to point others in the right direction of where to begin supporting students. Next slide. Now that I've briefly explained how to interpret a score report, I want to provide you as parent or guardian with a few pointers to remember while viewing your child's BAS3 BEST report. The purpose of the Universal Screener is to identify students who might benefit from additional resources or follow up with a trained school professional. Again, as I've said a couple of times, it is a starting point. School student support staff take additional steps to confirm risk and identify the needs of any student who has a score report that is extremely elevated for risk and elevated for risk. Results of the screener are based on a student's responses on a given day, and they are not meant in any way to be considered a diagnosis. Most students will have their needs met by services already provided by the school, but additional support is available if it is deemed necessary. Parents and guardians, you're partners with us in this process, and you will be consulted if risk is confirmed and additional supports are recommended. Next slide. The data provided by the BAS3 BEST empowers school staff to build stronger programming to meet the needs of students. At Tier 1, schools may focus on building community, increasing programming to bolster behavioral support, and be proactive in taking steps to create a welcoming culture of inclusion. Other supports that are available at schools range from referrals with school-based staff, small groups, skill building, or a referral to receive support from a licensed professional. Next slide. Let me take a moment to say thank you to all of the parents, guardians, and family members that are out there and the support that you provide to students. Your role in this effort of providing for the needs of the whole child is key. Maintaining an open line of communication with school staff, working as a team with school staff to determine support interventions, engaging in conversations with your student about their day-to-day, and continuing to follow up with your child's school to provide updates and insight on how strategies and interventions are working are exactly what we need to make sure that this whole venture is a success. That concludes my presentation this evening, and so now I'll pause for questions. Okay. All right, so no questions. We will move on to the next section. And during this session, Dr. Hildreth, who is the Director of Health Services, and I will bring you updates regarding telehealth. Next slide. APS is excited to expand telehealth services to students that will increase access to acute physical care or short-term mental health care. School-based telehealth programs are a comprehensive approach to increasing children's access to health care and close the gaps in care resulting from COVID-19, such as those gaps in mental health or other chronic conditions. Next slide. As you may be aware, APS partners with 7 mental health wraparound providers who are assigned to schools throughout the district. During school year 22, we learned that our providers were faced with numerous challenges, including lack of funding, insurance challenges, guardian non-compliance, and provider shortages, which impeded their ability to provide optimal support to students. Also, during school year 22, what we know is that 37% of students, or almost 20,000 students, were chronically absent. Additionally, results of the BAS3 BEST indicated that 25% of APS students were elevated or extremely elevated for risk of developing an emotional or behavior disorder. These data points are both relevant because, according to research, health-related issues are a top reason why children miss days of school. Dr. Hildreth will now bring data relative to physical health. Next slide.
Good evening. So currently there are 2 APS telehealth locations located at Fickett and Finch Elementary Schools. We have existing partnerships with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. When we looked at our physical health data, we learned that 1,293 APS students reported that there was at least one chronic condition. Based on the last school year, we had 25,300 APS students that were sent home for a medical condition or an exacerbated medical condition at school by an RN or LPN. So when we looked at our 2023 APS Whole Child Intervention initiatives, we looked at expanding our telehealth services from 2 schools to all APS schools, providing telehealth services to students on demand for physical as well as mental health services, and to make telehealth services available for students at school and at home, which again is an expansion of our current telehealth services with at Fickett and Finch. Next slide, please. So we want to cover the who, what, when, where, and why. So who is going to provide telehealth services? Hazel Health is a telehealth service designed specifically for our K-12 school setting, and they provide high quality services that support at-home services as well as school services to address the mental health and physical needs of our students. What is the service that we're really receiving? High quality doctor visits and therapy sessions for our students. Physical health services are provided by Hazel Health nurse practitioners, Hazel Health doctors, as well as physician assistants. The mental health component for telehealth services are provided by locally licensed, culturally competent therapists who specialize in addressing the needs of our children and adolescents. So when will this service be provided? During the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, students can access telehealth services at home or at their school. And where are we providing these services? Again, at all traditional APS schools and non-traditional school sites. Services were implemented for phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 clusters started October the 31st, 2022. And those clusters were Farrell, Douglas, North Atlanta, South Atlanta, and Jackson.
Okay.
Phase 2 is Midtown, and I apologize. Midtown, Carver, Mays, Washington, and non-traditional sites.
And the why is to increase student access to the services and support that they need to be well. We also want to ensure that those barriers are removed so that students get the physical health and the mental health support that they need for all students. So this is what we need from you parents so that our students can access Hazel telehealth services. We need a consent form for every single child. And so in order to be able to put that consent form on file, we need for you to take these following steps. you would go to my.hazel.co/Atlanta Public Schools / and click sign up now. Once you do that, all you have to do is fill out the form and click submit consent. All right. After you click that submit consent, it's going to ask you to create an account. You would enter your phone number, and then they will send you a code to your text, and it's just that simple. Next slide. We also want to point out that Hazel at Home is already up and running. We're so excited that that was launched as of October the 24th. And so right now, regardless of whether your school is one that is in phase 1 or phase 2, that at home, your child can have access to those physical health and mental health services. It is available Monday through Friday. The physical health will be available from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and the mental health services at home are available 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Next slide. All right. So we will pause there and see if there are any questions. All right, no questions. So I will pass that along to Dr. Sumler-Faison, who's going to discuss personalized learning.
Good evening, everyone. Personalized learning is a major initiative in Atlanta Public Schools, and this work is led by the Office of Instructional Technology under the leadership of Dr. Aaliyah Henderson-Rosser, who is our Assistant Superintendent. I am Dr. Jermaine Sumler-Faison. I'm the Director of Instructional Development and Design. This evening, my colleagues and I will provide you with an overview of how personalized learning looks in our school district. Next slide. So I'm sure that you are familiar with our North Star in Atlanta Public Schools, which is the APS 5. One of the APS 5 is personalized learning. As a district, we are so excited about this priority, and we feel confident that it is a game changer for our students and their success in the classroom. Personalized learning is an instructional approach that empowers our students to build ownership of their learning. It is student-centered, and it calls on us as educators to be completely responsive to the needs of our students to ensure that they receive the instruction that they need when they need it. Our approach to personalized learning is one size fits one, not one size fits all. Here in APS, we are committed to providing our scholars with personalized learning experiences. Next slide. In APS, we have adopted a framework for personalized learning that's aligned with our district priorities. Our core 4 is reflection and goal setting, targeted instruction, collaboration and creativity, and flexible path and pace. And so our focus on the core 4 really allows us to remain focused on creating and fostering a nurturing learning environment that promotes student reflection and ownership. Next slide. When we think about our core 4, we believe that reflection and goal setting really builds students' self-awareness, and it allows them to set goals that are meaningful. Our focus on targeted instruction is focused on students being able to articulate what they're learning and why. Flexible path and pace is really focused on teachers designing learning experiences that ensures that students get what they need when they need it. And it really taps into the resources and the materials that we need, that we utilize in the classroom to accomplish this. And then finally, collaboration and creativity focuses on discussing ideas, creating meaning, problem solving, and through students collaborating, talking, and coming together, it really creates an opportunity for them to be creative, and inspires novel ideas. And it also creates a space for them to really problem solve. Next slide. In our district, we are 100% committed to ensuring that all of our scholars experience a personalized learning experience over the next 3 years. And so before you see our Wave 1 schools who joined this movement during the 2021-2022 school year. On the next slide, you'll see our Wave 2 schools. And because of the positive impact this work had on our Wave 1 schools, we now have 24 schools in Wave 2. So kudos to all of our personalized learning schools. All remaining schools in APS will join Wave 3 during the next school year. And so next, we're going to take a closer look at our instructional technology department, the work that's led by Dr. Natasha Rachel, and how it contributes to our personalized learning work. And so although instructional technology supports all of the core 4 in personalized learning, we really focus on providing experiences for our students to collaborate and to be creative. Next slide. The instructional technology department encourages students to work together, share with each other, create projects, and to learn more about each other and themselves. Next slide. Collaboration and creativity matter for the reasons listed on the slide, obviously. We are really focused on students becoming creators and producers of their learning instead of consumers of the content. The ultimate goal is for our students to own their own learning experience. Next slide. My Backpack allows our students to take ownership of their learning experience. They have an opportunity to talk about My Backpack, the single sign-on. We have access, students have a single sign-on experience for My Backpack. Students can personalize their dashboards to personalize their learning experience. And these are just some of the examples of the apps that they have access to that will allow them to engage in each of the core 4. Next slide. Another way for students to take ownership of their learning and personalize their experience is through online tutoring, which we are using paper for that online tutoring experience. And so our scholars have access to paper 24/7, including the weekends. They can access paper through My Backpack. They have access to all content, and it's also available for elementary, middle, and high school students. Next slide. And so as parents or guardians, I'm sure you're wondering, how can you get your students involved in personalized learning journey, right? And so you all have access to Securely. You have access to Securely. It's an app that allows you to see a real-time view of your students' online activity. And so you can personalize your child's at-home experience by determining rules and times that they are available to use online services using their device. And so it's completely in your control. Next slide. And so next, Jennifer Saunders, Director of Library Media Services, will come on and share with you more information in terms of how personalized learning looks in the context of our media centers in APS. Jen?
Thank you. Thank you. So to help our students become successful learners, they need to be proficient readers. To become a proficient reader, our students must practice reading. To practice reading, our students should be able to visit and use the Library Media Center. In Atlanta Public Schools, every school has a certified school library media specialist in our library media centers who helps our students learn about their personal reading habits and sets goals for their reading. So when we think about personalized learning from the Library Media Center, we land in the space of student reflection and goal setting, which is one of the 4 components of personalized learning. Next slide. One thing our library media specialists are doing this year in alignment with personalized learning is to help each student recognize their reading identity. They help discover who our students are as a reader. When students learn about their reading identity, it's more than what's your favorite book or who's your favorite author. It's really digging into personal reading habits like, where do you like to read? Do you have books at home? Is there a time of day in which you prefer to read? Do you read when you aren't assigned a reading task? Are you a part of any reading programs? Our library media specialists start with reading identity, and we ensure that there is district-wide and school-wide programming to give our students the opportunity to grow healthy, independent, free choice reading habits. Next slide, please. Some of the programs we have include Race to Read, which is a district and citywide effort to build a city that reads. We have an annual Helen Ruffin Reading Bowl competition. We partner with the Georgia Tech women's basketball team with a program called Buzzer Readers to encourage our students to read independently and keep a log of their reading habits. These are just a few of the programs that are available to our students to help them reflect on their reading habits, set goals, and become even more proficient readers. Now I'm going to turn it over to our director of our Atlanta Virtual Academy, Cassandra Holmes.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good evening, parents. I do apologize for not being on camera. I had to make a shift in where I was presenting this evening, but nonetheless, I do want to share with you that Atlanta Virtual Academy is heavily involved with all the 4 core areas of personalized learning. When you look at goal setting, that is something we certainly encourage all of our students to do. Many of them choose to accelerate their learning by taking high school credit course in the middle school. And some of our high school students, they take a virtual course beyond their full during the day schedule. And then, of course, when you look at the second component of targeted instruction, we are aligned to our Georgia Standards of Excellence. It is rigorous. Our students are definitely getting everything they need to be successful on end of the course assessments and other high stakes tests as well. And then, of course, the third component, collaboration and creativity. We leverage and work very closely with the Department of Instructional Technology, and we use all of the technology tools, and because we want our virtual program to be engaging and innovative. So we partner very closely to make sure that our virtual students are being exposed to all the 21st century technologies. And then, of course, the self-paced piece, the last part, the last core component. The wonderful benefit of being an online learner is that you can learn anytime, any place, any space. So unlike in a traditional setting where students have to take math at 8 o'clock or science at 9 o'clock, our students have the flexibility in their learning that they can learn at any time that is convenient for them. So if this is something that seems a little interesting and you want to say, hey, you know, I want to get more information about Atlanta Virtual Academy, this seems like a fit for our family, our learners at the house, I would encourage you to have your student reach out to your counselor. They are very, very knowledgeable about our program. And then, of course, once you've reached out with your homeschool counselor, we will connect you with our academic specialists and our counseling team to make sure that we find the right fit for your student. I think at this time there is Q&A.
Thank you so much for the update from Ava and the personalized learning space. I have the awesome pleasure of closing out today by talking about our APS vision for mathematics and teaching and learning. Our vision for mathematics, teaching and learning was established to provide a clear pre-K through 12 vision for excellent mathematics instruction across all of our schools. We also wanted to make sure that our mathematics educators were trained on excellent mathematics instruction so that they can use this vision as a foundation for effectively teaching mathematics. Our goal was, number one, to ensure that all students are engaged in grade appropriate assignments and that all teachers are providing strong instruction, as well as making sure that our students are deeply engaged in the content of every lesson and that the teachers maintain high expectations for their students. In the orange box at the top of the page, you can see our vision statement. It is that all APS students, regardless of race, socioeconomic status, or learning differences, will consistently experience high-quality mathematics instruction that positions them to graduate prepared for college, career, and life. Underneath that, you can see our tenets that will support our vision. Again, I won't go through all of them, but I wanted to highlight a few of them that are very, very important. We wanted all of our students to see mathematics as a connected discipline that helps them to understand the world and to critique new ideas. We wanted to challenge not only students' thinking, but the thinking of others as we're working through units of learning that are evidence-based and support reasoning growth. We also wanted to exhibit or have students to exhibit a growth mindset, seeking feedback from teachers and peers and reflecting on both their successes and their mistakes. And finally, we want them to collaborate. You've probably heard that word a lot, but it's very important that students are exercising not only their right to voice their opinion and talk through problems in mathematics, but it gives them an opportunity to talk that through with peers and build relationships based on mutual respect and inclusion of others' mathematical ideas. You can kind of see, again, I won't go through all of the bullet points here, but we wanted to show you what those tenets before mean, aligned with what the students will do. I'm just going to, again, point out some of those things that we talked about before when I noted that students see mathematics as a connected discipline. We want them to understand how math can be used in other subject areas and in the real world. Another one that I pointed out was to challenge each other's thinking through reasoning and evidence-based critique. That simply means to talk with their peers about math and agree to disagree sometimes based on what they know. And then finally, the collaborative piece at number 7, where we said that students will be collaborating with their peers and build relationships. That looks like working with other students to solve math problems in a way that's respectful to others' ideas. So the big question is, how can you help at home? Number 1, point out math in everyday life. There's math all around us, not only when you're visiting the store, but whenever you're measuring at home or choosing sizes or counting money. All of those things count as real world situations. When your child is working on math homework, ask them to explain how they got the answer. Have them to teach you how they actually got the answer. Provide verbal mathematics problems where children have an opportunity to talk through the steps that they took. And again, embrace the struggle. Struggle is good. And try to avoid negative math attitudes. So what's next for our mathematics instruction? First up, we're working on, right now as we speak, building teacher capacity and competence around the math vision for teaching and learning. We will be implementing new math standards starting in the fall of next year in 2023-2024. In order to be prepared for that new math adoption, for those new math standards, we will adopt new math textbooks in the spring. Now, listen very carefully to this part, because I want you to understand that only K-5 and 9-12 will be adopting new math curricular resources. Our middle school our middle school teachers and students are already using Amplify Mathematics. So here's a little bit more information about how mathematics textbook adoption will work. First, know that a committee of various stakeholders will select the new math textbook. That committee will be made up of teachers, administrators, coaches, specialists, and of course, our parents of APS will weigh in on the new selection of the math textbook. Once the committee narrows down the choices, the textbooks will be available for parents to view and to provide feedback. The Mathematics Textbook Adoption Committee will begin meeting this month, and the final selection is projected to be made by March 31st. Two other things that we want to remind you of are the MAP winter testing windows. One that begins this Friday for MAP growth that will go through November 4th through November 18th for all students K through 12. And please mark your calendars for MAP fluency, which begins December 5th through 9th. And again, that's for students in grades pre-K through 2. Are there any questions about the new math work for our vision for the math textbook adoption?
Thank you, Ms. Riggins. I don't see any questions in the chat. So this concludes our presentation for this evening. On behalf of Chief Academic Officer Yolanda Brown and the whole Division of Academics, we appreciate you and thank you for your participation this evening and have a great evening. Thank you.